Well, hello everyone. I am Sam and you are listening to Chilliteracy. It's Saturday evening, at least for me, 9 o'clock. And in a bit, we'll be starting a new story. Which, will probably actually, once again, be through quite quickly. Because it's, at least my copy is very illustrated. Doesn't seem too long. And yeah, I don't know. We'll probably get through it fairly quickly, but we'll see how that goes. Hello everyone. Hi, welcome in. I'm in my newly found cozy reading pose. Mic on arm, sort of craned out in front of me, feet up on the desk. It honestly felt really nice actually last time reading like this, so I thought, hey, I'll try it again. So yeah. Oh, sorry, I've just seen a thing. 1 second. Yeah, I have. So I've linked the text at the top of chat. I'm not going to go straight into reading. We can spin his chair around. We can sit and rap for a bit, yo. But yeah, I've linked the text at the top of chat. But I was hoping it would be an illustrated one that I could find, because my copy, my Penguin Classics copy, is illustrated. And they're pretty good illustrations, but apparently not on any of the extant versions that I could find online. By which I mean the one copy that Gutenberg has, and then a whole bunch of audiobooks, which, illustrated audiobook sounds like a fun challenge. I guess it's just alt text. Hope you'll be able to puzzle while listening. The site has been very weird for you lately. It flashes a bunch which is not nice to your eyes. Oh, that's a shame. I wonder if that's something on their end, or interacting badly with your browser. Yeah. As you guess, you'll be crocheting ducks. Fair enough. Yeah. Trying to think really how much preamble I actually have. Not loads, I guess. I suppose, as we like to think of, the start of a new book as like a decent entry point for any new listeners. Did I remember to take a Quacken? No, I didn't. Even after you reminded me, I was like, yes, I absolutely. Then the stream happened. Well, not. No, I didn't do that. And it wasn't until I saw you posting later elsewhere that I realised. I think it was during Lucy's stream later. I was like, oh. Yeah. Hey, guess what? Apparently, according to your dad, there is a correct voice to read this in. No idea what that is. I'm probably not going to guess it. As in the correct voice. Brains do that. They really do. Yeah. I had kind of a lot suddenly come up during that stream. So yeah, I got distracted. Sorry, just listening to the high, keening wail of what sounds like an F1 car just bombing down the nearby motorways, and perhaps about to come past here, which is great. If only something could be done about that. No idea. He was thinking of someone specific. Like, my problem is with trying to find a voice for character, or a character or characters, is that when I'm reading by myself, I can be like, oh, okay, I'll do this person with this kind of voice and this one with this kind of voice, and then, as has previously been discussed on this stream, I forget this stuff. And it kind of almost needs to. Basically, the voice that you get is the voice that is some combination of what I have remembered I was going to do for this character, and what in that particular flash of me reading their name I have decided they're going to sound like. Which is why someone's accent, if you have, for instance, a lower class, one of the poor people represented in the book, their accent will drift almost sentence to sentence between Cockney, rough Northern, and, you know, Somerset farmhand. So, like, without sitting here with like a page of notes, like character names and descriptive notes for how I want to do them, and maybe even like a couple of pronunciation guide prompts for myself. Yeah, I might struggle to do that. Plus, so with this one, this is The Diary of a Nobody by George and Weedon Grossmith, and it's a diary. It's written in diary form with like day by day entries of, you know, what has happened to him that day, and so it has that thing of like, it's in the narration is also the narrator and the voice of the narration is also from your protagonist. And so I have that thing of like, should I be reading everything in this character's voice, or just the given speech that he puts in? And that's its own kind of challenge, because doing it largely in my natural, comfortable speaking voice is one thing, but attempting to read the entire thing in the voice of a character is, to me, a much bigger task. And it's one that I never quite know how best to approach. Or tend, like most things I don't know how to approach in life, to just avoid it. I'm trying to deal with that and get better at it. But here we are. It's a learned habit, and I'm trying to unpick it. So yeah, never quite sure how to handle that one. So all of which is to say, you'll get what you get, and I'll try and make it fun. But I didn't actually know your dad had read this, Lucy. Interesting. I wonder what he makes of it. It seems like a bit of an absurdist farce. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there are. Why is it desktop audio? Have I got the stream on mute? I have. Okay, good. So I've got desktop audio muted, but I could see it still pinging, like there's sound coming through, which I don't like in case something does get unmuted along the way, and I was just trying to figure out what it was. Yes, I had the stream unmuted in the background, so fortunately I wasn't, like, restreaming myself. Yeah, I don't really know if there's anything else. I feel like preamble is largely done. It's, yeah, not a lot else has really happened to talk about. Oh, Manson, hello, welcome in. Yeah, I feel like Joey's probably about ready to start. Joey's not shown up yet. He will, of course, within the next 9 minutes, show up to demand to go on my lap, and you'll be very entertained by that, I'm sure, and the inconvenience that comes with it. But otherwise, I guess, you know, your text is at the top of chat. Sorry there's no illustrations, because the book is full of them. I'm just quickly going to actually, like, flick through the introduction to see if there's some other, like, pronunciation guides on things. 1 second, don't mind me. No. There's a lot of, like, footnotes and things in this, sort of comparing, like, people and events in it to, like, actual people from the author's lives. So, you know, there's that, which is, I guess, to say it's worth picking up the book if you want to read the footnotes and know more about it. No, I guess we'll start. Joey shows up and he'll read us the book. He'll read us some cat books. Angeline, hello, welcome in. Time for books? Indeed. Yeah, I guess if we're done and ready, I might as well give it the old start. So, as I say, your text is linked at the top of chat, or if you're watching on YouTube, firstly, hello, hi, welcome in. And your text will be linked in the description below, although not chapter by chapter, because it looks like it's not an edition that has that, so apologies. But otherwise, let us begin. This is The Diary of a Nobody by George and Weedon Grossmith. Why should I not publish my diary? I have often seen reminiscences of people I have never even heard of, and I fail to see, because I do not happen to be a somebody, why my diary should not be interesting. My only regret is that I did not commence it when I was a youth. Charles Pooter, The Laurels, Brickfield Terrace, Holloway. Chapter 1. We settle down in our new home, and I resolve to keep a diary. Tradesmen trouble us a bit, so does the scraper. The curate calls and pays me a great compliment. My dear wife, Carrie, and I have just been a week in our new house, The Laurels, Brickfield Terrace, Holloway, a nice 6-roomed residence, not counting basement with a front breakfast parlour. We have a little front garden, and there is a flight of 10 steps up to the front door, which, by the by, we keep locked with the chain up. Cummings, Gowing, and our other intimate friends always come up to the little side entrance, which saves the servant the trouble of going up to the front door, thereby taking her from her work. We have a nice little back garden which runs down to the railway. We were rather afraid of the noise of the trains at first, but the landlord said we should not notice them after a bit, and took £2 off the rent. He was certainly right, and beyond the cracking of the garden wall at the bottom we have suffered no inconvenience. After my work in the city, I like to be at home. What's the good of a home if you are never in it? Home, sweet home, that's my motto. I am always in of an evening. Our old friend Gowing may drop in without ceremony. So may Cummings, who lives opposite. My dear wife, Caroline, and I are pleased to see them if they like to drop in on us. But Carrie and I can manage to pass our evenings together without friends. There is always something to be done. A tin tack here, a Venetian blind to put straight, a fan to nail up, or part of a carpet to nail down, all of which I can do with my pipe in my mouth. While Carrie is not above putting a button on a shirt, mending a pillowcase, or practising the Sylvia Gavotte on our new cottage piano, on the 3-year system, manufactured by W. Bilkson, in small letters, from Collard and Collard, in very large letters. It is also a great comfort to us to know that our boy, Willie, is getting on so well in the Bank of Oldham. We should like to see more of him. Now for my diary. April 3rd. Tradesman called for custom, and I promised Farmerson, the ironmonger, to give him a turn if I wanted any nails or tools. By the by, that reminds me there is no key to our bedroom door, and the bells must be seen to. The parlour bell is broken, and the front door rings up in the servants' bedroom, which is ridiculous. Dear friend Gowing dropped in, but wouldn't stay, saying there was an infernal smell of paint. April 4th. Tradesman still calling. Carrie being out, I arranged to deal with Horwin, who seemed a civil butcher with a nice clean shop. Ordered a shoulder of mutton for tomorrow, to give him a trial. Carrie arranged with Borset, the butterman, and ordered a pound of fresh butter and £1.5 pounds of salt, ditto for kitchen, and a shilling's worth of eggs. In the evening, Cummings unexpectedly dropped in to show me the meerschaum pipe that he had won in a raffle in the city, and told me to handle it carefully, as it would spoil the colouring if the hand was moist. He said he wouldn't stay, as he didn't care much for the smell of paint, and fell over the scraper as he went out. Must get the scraper removed, or else I shall get into a scrape. I don't often make jokes. April 5th. 2 shoulders of mutton arrived, Carrie having arranged with another butcher without consulting me. Gowing called, and fell over the scraper coming in. Must get that scraper removed. April 6th. Eggs for breakfast, simply shocking. Sent them back to Borset with my compliments, and he needn't call any more for orders. Couldn't find umbrella, and though it was pouring with rain, had to go without it. Sarah said Mr. Gowing must have took it by mistake last night, as there was a stick in the all that didn't belong to nobody. In the evening, hearing someone talking in a loud voice to the servant in the downstairs hall, I went out to see who it was, and was surprised to find it was Borset, the butterman, who was both drunk and offensive. Borset, on seeing me, said he would be hanged if he would ever serve city clerks any more. The game wasn't worth the candle. Well, I restrained my feelings and quietly remarked that I thought it was possible for a city clerk to be a gentleman. He replied he was very glad to hear it, and wanted to know whether I had ever come across one, for he hadn't. He left the house, slamming the door after him, which nearly broke the fanlight, and I heard him fall over the scraper, which made me feel glad I hadn't removed it. When he had gone, I thought of a splendid answer I ought to have given him. However, I will keep it for another occasion. April 7th. Being Saturday, I looked forward to being home early and putting a few things straight, but two of our principals at the office were absent through illness, and I did not get home till 7. Found Borset waiting. He had been 3 times during the day to apologize for his conduct last night. He said he was unable to take his bank holiday last Monday, and took it last night instead. He begged me to accept his apology, and a pound of fresh butter. He seems, after all, a decent sort of fellow, so I gave him an order for some fresh eggs, with a request that on this occasion they should be fresh. I am afraid we shall have to get some new stair carpets after all. Our old ones are not quite wide enough to meet the paint on either side. Carrie suggests that we might ourselves broaden the paint. I will see if we can match the colour, dark chocolate, on Monday. April 8th, Sunday. After church, the curate came back with us. I sent Carrie in to open the front door, which we do not use except on special occasions. She could not get it open, and after all my display, I had to take the curate, whose name, by the by, I did not catch, round the side entrance. He caught his foot in the scraper and tore the bottom of his trousers. Most annoying, as Carrie could not well offer to repair them on a Sunday. After dinner, went to sleep. Took a walk round the garden and discovered a beautiful spot for sowing mustard and cress and radishes. Went to church again in the evening. Walked back with the curate. Carrie noticed he had got on the same pair of trousers, only repaired. He wants me to take round the plate, which I think a great compliment. Chapter 2. Tradesmen and the scraper still troublesome. Gowing rather tiresome with his complaints of the paint. I make one of the best jokes of my life. Delights of gardening. Mr. Stilbrook, Gowing, Cummings, and I have a little misunderstanding. Sarah makes me look a fool before Cummings. April 9th. Commenced the morning badly. The butcher, whom we decided not to arrange with, called and blackguarded me in the most uncalled-for manner. He began by abusing me and saying he did not want my custom. I simply said, "Then what are you making all this fuss about it for?" And he shouted at the top of his voice so that all the neighbours could hear me, "Ha! Go along! I could buy up things like you by the dozen." I shut the door, and was giving Carrie to understand that this disgraceful scene was entirely her fault, when there was a violent kicking at the door, enough to break the panels. It was the blackguard butcher again, who said he had cut his foot over the scraper, and would immediately bring an action against me. Called at Farmerson's, the ironmonger, on my way to town, and gave him the job of moving the scraper and repairing the bells, thinking it scarcely worthwhile to trouble the landlord with such a trifling matter. Arrived home, tired and worried. Mr. Putley, a painter and decorator who had sent in a card, said he could not match the colour on the stairs, as it contained Indian carmine. He said he spent half a day calling at warehouses to see if he could get it. He suggested he should entirely repaint the stairs. It would cost very little more. If he tried to match it, he could only make a bad job of it. It would be more satisfactory to him and to us to have the work done properly. I consented, but felt I had been talked over. Planted some mustard and cress and radishes, and went to bed at 9. April 10th. Farmerson came round to attend to the scraper himself. He seems a very civil fellow. He says he does not usually conduct such small jobs personally, but for me he would do so. I thanked him and went to town. It is disgraceful how late some of the young clerks are at arriving. I told 3 of them that if Mr. Perkup, the principal, heard it, they might be discharged. Pitt, a monkey of 17, who has only been with us 6 weeks, told me to keep my hair on. I informed him I had had the honour of being in the firm 20 years, to which he insolently replied that I looked it. I gave him an indignant look and said, "I demand from you some respect, sir." He replied, "All right, go on demanding." I would not argue with him any further. You cannot argue with people like that. In the evening, Gowing called and repeated his complaint about the smell of paint. Gowing is sometimes very tedious with his remarks, and not always cautious. Carrie once very properly reminded him that she was present. April 11th. Mustard and crash and radishes not come up yet. Today was a day of annoyances. I missed the 8:45 bus to the city, through having words with the grocer's boy, who for the 2nd time had the impertinence to bring his basket to the hall door, and had left the marks of his dirty boots on the fresh-cleaned doorsteps. He said he had knocked at the side door with his knuckles for 1/4 of an hour. I knew Sarah, our servant, could not hear this, as she was upstairs doing the bedrooms, so asked the boy why he did not ring the bell. He replied that he did pull the bell, but the handle came off in his hand. I was half an hour late at the office, a thing that has never happened to me before. There has recently been much irregularity in the attendance of the clerks, and Mr. Perkup, our principal, unfortunately chose this very morning to pounce down upon us early. Someone had given the tip to the others. The result was that I was the only one late of the lot. Buckling, one of the senior clerks, was a brick, and I was saved by his intervention. As I passed by Pitt's desk, I heard him remark to his neighbour how disgracefully late some of the head clerks arrive. This was, of course, meant for me. I treated the observation with silence, simply giving him a look, which unfortunately had the effect of making both of the clerks laugh. Thought afterwards it would have been more dignified if I had pretended not to have heard him at all. Cummings called in the evening, and we played dominoes. April 12th. Mustard and crash and radishes still not come up yet. Left Farmerson repairing the scraper, but when I came home found 3 men working. I asked the meaning of it, and Farmerson said that in making a fresh hole he had penetrated the gas pipe. He said it was a most ridiculous place to put the gas pipe, and the man who did it evidently knew nothing about his business. I felt his excuse was no consolation for the expense I shall be put to. In the evening, after tea, Gowing dropped in, and we had a smoke together in the breakfast parlour. Carrie joined us later, but did not stay long, saying the smoke was too much for her. It was also rather too much for me, and Gowing had given me what he called a green cigar, one that his friend Schumach had brought over from America. The cigar didn't look green, but I fancy I must have done so, for when I had smoked a little more than half, I was obliged to retire on the pretext of telling Sarah to bring in the glasses. I took a walk round the garden 3 or 4 times, feeling the need of fresh air. On returning, Gowing noticed I was not smoking, offered me another cigar, which I politely declined. Gowing began his usual sniffing, so, in anticipating him, I said, "You're not going to complain of that smell of paint again?" He said, "No, not this time, but I'll tell you what, I distinctly smell dry rot." I don't often make jokes, but I replied, "You're talking a lot of dry rot yourself." I could not help roaring at this, and Carrie said her sides quite ached with laughter. I never was so immensely tickled by anything I had ever said before. I actually woke up twice during the night, and laughed till the bed shook. April 13th. An extraordinary coincidence. Carrie had called in a woman to make some chintz covers for our drawing-room chairs and sofa to prevent the sun fading the green rep of the furniture. I saw the woman, and recognised her as a woman who used to work years ago for my old aunt at Clapham. Only shows how small the world is. April 14th. Spent the whole of the afternoon in the garden, having this morning picked up at a bookstall for 5p a capital little book, in good condition, on gardening. I procured and sowed some half-hardy annuals in what I fancy will be a warm, sunny border. I thought of a joke, and called out Carrie. Carrie came out rather testy, I thought. I said, "I have just discovered we have got a lodging-house." She replied, "How do you mean?" I said, "Look at the borders!" Carrie said, "Is that all you wanted me for?" I said, "Any other time you would have laughed at my little pleasantry." Carrie said, "Certainly, at any other time, but not when I am busy in the house." The stairs looked very nice. Gowing called, and said the stairs looked all right, but it made the banisters look all wrong, and suggested a coat of paint on them also, which Carrie quite agreed with. I walked round to Putley, and fortunately he was out, so I had a good excuse to let the banisters slide. By the by, that is rather funny. April 15th, Sunday. At 3 o'clock, Cummings and Gowing called for a good long walk over Hampstead and Finchley, and brought with them a friend named Stilbrook. We walked and chatted together, except Stilbrook, who was always a few yards behind us, staring at the ground and cutting at the grass with his stick. As it was getting on for 5, we four held a consultation, and Gowing suggested we should make for the Cow and Hedge and get some tea. Stilbrook said brandy and soda was good enough for him. I reminded them that all public houses were closed till 6 o'clock. Stilbrook said, "That's all right, bona fide travellers." We arrived, and as I was trying to pass, the man in charge of the gate said, "Where are you from?" I replied, "Holloway." He immediately put up his arm and declined to let me pass. I turned back for a moment, when I saw Stilbrook, closely followed by Cummings and Gowing, make for the entrance. I watched them, and thought I would have a good laugh at their expense. I heard the porter say, "Where from?" When, to my surprise, in fact disgust, Stilbrook replied, "Blackheath," and the 3 were immediately admitted. Gowing called to me across the gate and said, "We shan't be a minute." I waited for them the best part of an hour. When they appeared, they were all in most excellent spirits, and the only one who made an effort to apologise was Mr. Stilbrook, who said to me, "It was very rough on you to be kept waiting, but we had another spin for S&Bs." I walked home in silence. I couldn't speak to them. I felt very dull all the evening, but it deemed it advisable not to say anything to Carrie about the matter. April 16th. After business, set to work in the garden. When it got dark, I wrote to Cummings and Gowing, who neither called for a wonder, perhaps they were ashamed of themselves, about yesterday's adventure at the Cow and Hedge. Afterwards made up my mind not to write yet. April 17th. Thought I would write a kind little note to Gowing and Cummings about last Sunday, and warn them against Mr. Stilbrook. Afterwards, thinking the matter over, tore up the letter and determined not to write at all, but to speak quietly to them. Dumbfounded at receiving a sharp letter from Cummings, saying that both he and Gowing had been waiting for an explanation of my, mind you, my extraordinary conduct coming home on Sunday. At last I wrote, I thought I was the aggrieved party, but as I freely forgive you, feeling yourself aggrieved, should bestow forgiveness on me. I have copied this verbatim in the diary because I think it is one of the most perfect and thoughtful sentences I have ever written. I posted the letter, but in my own heart I felt I was actually apologizing for having been insulted. April 18th. Am in for a cold. Spent the whole day at the office sneezing. In the evening, the cold being intolerable, sent Sarah out for a bottle of Kinahan. Fell asleep in the armchair and woke with the shivers. Was startled by a loud knock at the front door. Carrie awfully flurried. Sarah still out, so went up, opened the door and found it was only Cummings. Remembered the grocer's boy had again broken the side bell. Cummings squeezed my hand and said, "I've just seen Gowing. All right, say no more about it." There is no doubt they are both under the impression I have apologized. While playing dominoes with Cummings in the parlour, he said, "By the by, do you want any wine or spirits? My cousin, Merton, has just set up in the trade, and has a splendid whisky, 4 years in bottle at 38 shillings. It was worth your while laying down a few dozen of it." I told him my cellars, which were very small, were full up. To my horror, at that very moment Sarah entered the room, and putting a bottle of whisky, wrapped in a dirty piece of newspaper on the table in front of us, said, "Please, sir, the grocer says he ain't got no more Kinahan, but you'll find this very good at 2 and 6, with 2p returned on the bottle. And please, did you want any more sherry? As he has some 1 and 3, as dry as a nut." Chapter 3. A conversation with Mr. Merton on society. Mr. and Mrs. James of Sutton come up. A miserable evening at the Tank Theatre. Experiments with enamel paint. I make another good joke, but Gowing and Cummings are unnecessarily offended. I paint the bath red, with unexpected result. April 19th. Cummings called, bringing with him his friend Merton, who was in the wine trade. Gowing also called. Mr. Merton made himself at home at once, and Carrie and I were both struck with him immediately, and thoroughly approved of his sentiments. He leaned back in his chair, and said, "You must take me as I am." And I replied, "Yes, and you must take us as we are. We're homely people. We are not swells." He answered, "No, I can see that." Gowing roared with laughter, but Merton, in a most gentlemanly manner, said to Gowing, "I don't think you quite understand me. I intended to convey that our charming host and hostess were superior to the follies of fashion, and preferred leading a simple and wholesome life to gadding about to 2p, halfpenny, tea-drinking afternoons, and living above their incomes." I was immensely pleased with these sensible remarks of Merton's, and concluded that subject by saying, "No, candidly, Mr. Merton, we don't go into society, because we do not care for it, and what with the expense of cabs here and cabs there, and white gloves and white ties, etc., it doesn't seem worth the money." Merton said in reference to friends, "My motto is few and true, and by the way I also apply that to wine, little and good." Gowing said, "Yes, and sometimes cheap and tasty, old man?" Merton, still continuing, said he should treat me as a friend and put me down for a dozen of his Lochinvar whisky, and as I was an old friend of Gowing, I should have it for 36 shillings, which was considerably under what he paid for it. He booked his own order, and further said that at any time I wanted any passes for the theatre, I was to let him know, as his name stood good for any theatre in London. April 20th. Carrie reminded me that as her old school friend Annie Fuller's, now Mrs. James, and her husband had come up from Sutton for a few days, it would look kind to take them to the theatre, and would I drop a line to Mr. Merton asking him for passes for 4, either for the Italian Opera, Haymarket, Savoy, or Lyceum. I wrote Merton to that effect. April 21st. Got a reply from Merton saying he was very busy and just at present couldn't manage passes for the Italian Opera, Haymarket, Savoy or Lyceum, but the best thing going on in London was the Brown Bushes at the Tank Theatre, Islington, and enclosed seats for 4, also bill for whisky. April 23rd. Mr. and Mrs. James, Miss Fuller that was, came to meet tea, and we left directly after for the Tank Theatre. We got a bus that took us to King's Cross, and then changed into one that took us to the Angel. Mr. James each time insisted on paying for all, saying that I had paid for the tickets and that was quite enough. We arrived at the theatre, where, curiously enough, all our busload, except an old woman with a basket, seemed to be going in. I walked ahead and presented the tickets. The man looked at them and called out, "Mr. Willerley, do you know anything about these?" holding up my tickets. The gentleman called to came up and examined my tickets and said, "Who gave you these?" I said, rather indignantly, "Mr. Merton, of course." He said, "Merton? Who's he?" I answered, rather sharply, "You ought to know. His name's good at any theatre in London." He replied, "Oh, is it? Well, it ain't no good here. These tickets, which are not dated, were issued under Mr. Swinstead's management, which has since changed hands." While I was having some very unpleasant words with the man, James, who had gone upstairs with the ladies, called out, "Come on." I went up after them, and a very civil attendant said, "This way, please, box H." I said to James, How on earth did you manage it?" And to my horror he replied, "Why, paid for it, of course." This was humiliating enough, and I could scarcely follow the play, but I was doomed to still further humiliation. I was leaning out of the box, when my tie, a little black bow which fastened onto the stud by means of a new patent, fell into the pit below. A clumsy man, not noticing it, had his foot on it for ever so long before he discovered it. He then picked it up and eventually flung it under the next seat in disgust. What with the box incident and the tie, I felt quite miserable. Mr. James of Sutton was very good. He said, "Don't worry, no one will notice it with your beard. That's the only advantage of growing one that I can see." There was no occasion for that remark, for Carrie is very proud of my beard. To hide the absence of the tie, I had to keep my chin down the rest of the evening, which caused a pain at the back of my neck. Speaking of a pain in the neck, Joey has been scratching at the door and would like to come in, so 1 second. And 3, 2, 1. What's up, guys? It's Sam and Joey. Got any words? Any more you want to say? Do you want to do the ad read, or shall I? You want to do it? Yeah? Okay, who's the stream sponsor this week? Who's sponsoring? Is it Dreamies? Have we got that Dreamy sponsorship? You done? Okay, I've embarrassed you. Alright. Now I ruin the positioning of the mic for this whole bit. Now I have to reseat myself. Whoops. I'm getting caught up on wires. You go. You go there. Get that Dreamy's bag. He would just eat through the bag. Have you had dreams? He's definitely had dreams. I don't think he's had them for a while. But he is a Dreamy's fiend. I'll get the money. We'll both get the Dreamy's bag. You can just have the bag of Dreamy's, and I'll use the money that they give us to buy you more Dreamy's. That. Hello. I don't know. Can't help. Right. Where were we? April 24th. Could scarcely sleep a wink through thinking of having brought up Mr. and Mrs. James from the country to go to the theatre last night, and his having paid for a private box because our order was not honoured. And such a poor play, too. I wrote a very satirical letter to Merton, the wine merchant who gave us the pass, and said, considering we had to pay for our seats, we did our best to appreciate the performance. I thought this line rather cutting, and I asked Carrie how many P's there were in appreciate, and she said 1. After I sent off the letter, I looked at the dictionary and found there were 2. Awfully vexed at this. Decided not to worry myself any more about the Jameses, for, as Carrie wisely said, we'll make it all right with them by asking them up from Sutton one evening next week to play at Bezique. April 25th. In consequence of Brickwell telling me his wife was working wonders with the new Pinkford's enamel paint, I determined to try it. I bought 2 tins of red on my way home. I hastened through tea, went into the garden and painted some flower pots. I called out Carrie, who said, "You've always got some new-fangled craze." But she was obliged to admit that the flower pots looked remarkably well. Went upstairs into the servant's bedroom and painted her washstand, towel horse, and chest of drawers. To my mind it was an extraordinary improvement, but, as an example of the ignorance of the lower classes in the matter of taste, our servant, Sarah, on seeing them, evinced no sign of pleasure, but merely said she thought they looked very well as they was before. April 26th. Got some more red enamel paint, red, to my mind, being the best colour, and painted the coal scuttle and the backs of our Shakespeare, the binding of which had almost worn out. April 27th. Painted the bath red, and was delighted with the result. Sorry to say, Carrie was not. In fact, we had a few words about it. She said I ought to have consulted her, and she had never heard of such a thing as a bath being painted red. I replied, it's merely a matter of taste. Fortunately, further argument on the subject was stopped by a voice saying, "May we come in?" It was only Cummings, who said, "Your maid opened the door and asked me to excuse her showing me in, as she was wringing out some socks." I was delighted to see him, and suggested we should have a game of whist with a dummy, and by way of merriment said, "You can be the dummy." Cummings, I thought rather ill-naturedly, replied, "Funny as usual." He said he couldn't stop, he only called to leave me the bicycle news, and as he had done with it. Another ring at the bell. It was Gowing, who said he must apologise for coming so often, and that one of these days we must come round to him. I said, "A very extraordinary thing has struck me." "Something funny as usual," said Cummings. "Yes," I replied. "I think even you will say so this time. It's concerning you both, for doesn't it seem odd that Gowing's always coming and Cummings always going?" Carrie, who had evidently quite forgotten about the bath, went into fits of laughter. As for me myself, I fairly doubled up in my chair till it cracked beneath me. I think this is one of the best jokes I have ever made. Then imagine my astonishment on perceiving both Cummings and Gowing perfectly silent and without a smile on their faces. After rather an unpleasant pause, Cummings, who had opened a cigar case, closed it up again and said, "Yes, I think after that I shall be going, and I am sorry I failed to see the fun of your jokes." Gowing said he didn't mind a joke when it wasn't rude, but a pun on a name, to his thinking, was certainly a little wanting in good taste. Cummings followed it up by saying if it had been said by anyone else but myself, he shouldn't have entered the house again. This rather unpleasantly terminated what might have been a cheerful evening. However, it was as well they went, for the charwoman had finished up the remains of the cold pork. April 28th. At the office, the new and very young clerk, Pitt, who was very impudent to me a week or so ago, was late again. I told him it would be my duty to inform Mr. Perkup, the principal. To my surprise, Pitt apologized most humbly and in a most gentlemanly fashion. I was unfeignedly pleased to notice this improvement in his manner towards me, and told him I would look over his unpunctuality. Passing down the room an hour later, I received a hard smack in the face from a rolled-up ball of hard foolscap. I turned round sharply, but all the clerks were apparently riveted to their work. I am not a rich man, but I would give half a sovereign to know whether that was thrown by accident or design. Went home early and bought some more enamel paint, black this time, and spent the evening touching up the fender, picture frames, and an old pair of boots, making them look good as new. Also painted Gowing's walking stick, which he left behind, and made it look like ebony. April 29th, Sunday. Woke up with a fearful headache and strong symptoms of a cold. Carrie, with a perversity which is just like her, said it was a painter's colic, and was the result of my having spent the last few days with my nose over a paint pot. I told her firmly that I knew a great deal better what was the matter with me than she did. I had got a chill, and decided to have a bath as hot as I could bear it. Bath ready, could scarcely bear it so hot. I persevered and got in. Very hot, but very acceptable. I lay still for some time. On moving my hand above the surface of the water, I experienced the greatest fright I ever received in the whole course of my life. For imagine my horror on discovering my hand, as I thought, full of blood. My first thought was that I had ruptured an artery and was bleeding to death, and should be discovered later on looking like a second Parrt, as I remembered seeing him in Madame Tussaud's. My second thought was to ring the bell, but remembered there was no bell to ring. My third was that there was nothing but the enamel paint, which had dissolved with boiling water. I stepped out of the bath perfectly red all over. I determined not to say a word to Carrie, but to tell Farmerson to come on Monday and paint the bath white. And that brings us to the end of the chapter, and where we shall take our first break for today. First and only break. I've done it again. Yeah. There you go. That's where we're at so far. Yeah, paint the inside of the bath red, and then immediately pour yourself a bath in it. What could possibly go wrong? But yes, it is break time. So, I'm going to give you a 5-minute timer. I will not be moving because I have a cat who has wrestled his way onto my lap, and he's going to be here for a time. So, yeah, he's not a clever man, but he's very proud of his sense of humour. So yeah, I'll see you back here in 5 minutes or so, friends. Bye for now. we're back. I have moved precisely 0 inches. Yeah. Scientists are probably going to be wondering why the clocks are all a little bit off at the end of the year. It's because the gravitational force exerted by a cat just slightly, it slows the rotation of the Earth. You should forward my post, thank you. Just like, yeah, I don't know. Just deliver a sandwich or something every day or so. That would be great. You haven't moved, but you put a very good picture in the Discord. Excellent. I shall remain as professional as I may and look at it afterwards. Unless it is important that I look now. Yes, this is the life of a cat dad. He's probably going to hop down now. He looks like he's actually realizing that he's done with this. Like, the head comes up and he's like, listen around a bit, see if I can hear any food. And then maybe go look for that. Nothing urgent or relevant. Fair enough. Yeah. So, I'm kind of getting through this a bit faster than I expect. You want to look at the book? Okay, you want to rub your face on the corner of the book? Yeah, that is a good spot to, like, snuffle. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right on the angle of the paperback. Really, really smush your cheeks into that. That good? Good. Thank you. Thank you for checking the book. He is oftentimes a good boy. I will qualify. Sometimes there's a buffer overflow, and he flips back around to being a bad boy. Which, as I understand it, actually is an apocryphal thing. The whole Gandhian civilization, his goodness value was set too high, and it, like, overran and reset back to, like, most evil, and that's why he got, like, real nuke happy. Civ. I'm pretty sure I had heard more people discussing it recently. It was like, that's not actually necessarily true. I'm seeing some unverified opinions from people in chat who have never actually had to spend time around Joey. You heard it was a myth, and you do remember hearing that as well. Yeah, I think I've got a feeling it was People Make Games, the really good, like, game documentary series, sort of led by Chris Pratt, who's a former Eurogamer journalist. Does some really good, like, Patreon funded, just digging out interesting stories and good, like, sort of documentary coverage of them. I've got a feeling it was one of their videos, for, say, People Make Games, about it. And I think, if I remember correctly, the conclusion they reached was, we don't actually know. But kind of dispelling the absolute certainty that, yes, it was a weird, like, yeah, like, overflow value thing where, Gandhi's niceness effectively was set to maximum already, and so therefore when it ticks up any point, it flipped back over to 0 and made him the meanest fellow in the game. Which was always the reported story as to why that happened. And yeah, I think it was mainly like, we spoke to the developers and they weren't actually convinced it was that. There's a Wikipedia article for it being the urban legend. Ah, nice. Glad we've reached that level of coverage for it. Cool. Well, I don't have time to stop and read that right now. But yeah, I had, like, a difficult time judging the length of this, because, frankly, after the last stream, which went on for, was it did we hit 3 hours, 3.5 hours, something like that, to finish off 3 Men on the Bummel? That was a long one. to close that out. I'm hesitant to repeat that in a hurry. Plus, I've also been streaming quite a bit more on Longest John's Gaming this week, so I don't want to overdo it. But because the book that I'm reading from is, firstly, it's thoroughly illustrated, which takes up room on a page that I'm not reading. Also, the diary format, broken up as it is, also means just like there is less text on the average page, and so it's made it sort of difficult to gauge exactly how much like I should be reading, but it does seem like I'm getting through it a lot faster than I expected. So, even with that sort of overestimation in mind, it still seems, we will be getting through tonight's stream fairly quickly, but that's fine. That's okay. But yeah, why not? Why not carry on? Why not press on? We have more story to read, more to hear, and I don't know that like, literally nothing has happened to me during the break. I've just been sat here with a cat on me, so it's not like I've got any new incredible life. Oh, he's snuggling his nose into the blanket. No, keep doing that. That was really cute. You can do that. That is the adorable thing, that as it gets cold, the nosy gets cold, and so then we have to, like, bury the face into paws or a blanket, and oh, it's adorable. Yes, you are. I'm sorry. You think of yourself as like a tough, mean, hardened cat from the streets of Birmingham, but you are in fact just a big soft boy who lives for Scritches and Dreamies. We're working on that sponsorship. If you can just say like 10% discount code, if you can just get that, we'll be set up. Okay, I'll take it to them, we'll pitch it, they won't be able to say no. 10% off your first order using code MEOW10, and we'll be set for life. Do you think you can do that? He has literally turned round to look at me. Yeah, no, he thinks he can. Great. Just like one of those. Bit of that. Yeah. They won't be able to say no. Okay, I'm going to read my story. You sit there and look like that. If we are ready after the whole improv routine we just worked out there, we shall carry on. Incredible cat impersonation. Thank you. I have spent a lot of time trying to talk to cats. At one point, actually, years ago, there was some random video of cats talking that I noticed. It wasn't Joey. It was I don't think it was Joey. It was a different cat at the time. And when playing that video, this cat would just like, he would just look like, I couldn't tell if to his ears they were saying something like offensive and threatening, but it wasn't just the standard cat like, ooh, I'm hearing a cat, I'm gonna go on the defensive or something. Like it was like, it was a reaction. It was like, yo, what did I just hear them say? And I started trying to mimic it, and every now and then I would get it right, and he would give me the same look, just like snap his head around like, yo, what did I just hear you say? And yeah, so once in my life I've apparently been able to speak cat in a way that resonated. But the rest of the time it's just me like mimicking and imitating, and trying to do my best to get that same response, and never quite getting there. But yeah, if we're ready, your text is pinned at the top of chat. We made it as far as, where is this? Chapter 4. So when I've removed all the stray cat hair from my nose and mouth, you're going to hear more of this, I apologise. Let us continue from chapter 4, with The Diary of a Nobody. The Ball at the Mansion House. April 30th. Perfectly astounded at receiving an invitation for Carrie and myself from the Lord and Lady Mayoress of the Mansion House to meet the representatives of trades and commerce. My heart beat like that of a schoolboy. Carrie and I read the invitation over 2 or 3 times. I could scarcely eat my breakfast. I said, and I felt it from the bottom of my heart, "Carrie, darling, I was a proud man when I led you down the aisle of the church on our wedding day. That pride will be equalled, if not surpassed, when I lead my dear, pretty wife up to the Lord and Lady Mayoress of the Mansion House." I saw the grief. Okay, car backfire and sounded like a gunshot. Anyway, back into character. I saw the tears in Carrie's eyes, and she said, "Charlie, dear, it is I who have to be proud of you, and I am very, very proud of you. You have called me pretty, and as long as I am pretty in your eyes, I am happy. You, dear old Charlie, are not handsome, but you are good, which is far more noble." I gave her a kiss, and she said, "I wonder if there will be any dancing. I have not danced with you for years." I cannot tell what induced me to do it, but I seized her round the waist, and we were silly enough to be executing a wild kind of polka, when Sarah entered, grinning, and said, "There is a man, Mum, at the door who wants to know if you want any good coals." Most annoyed at this. Spent the evening in answering, and tearing up again, the reply to the mansion house, having left word with Sarah if Gowing or Cummings called we were not at home. Must consult Mr. Perkup how to answer the Lord Mayor's invitation. May 1st. Carrie said I should like to send Mother the invitation to look at. I consented as soon as I had answered it. I told Mr. Perkup at the office with a feeling of pride that we had received an invitation to the Mansion House, and he said, to my astonishment, that he himself gave in my name to the Lord Mayor's secretary. I felt this rather discounted the value of the invitation, but I thanked him, and in reply to me he described how I was to answer it. I felt the reply was too simple, but of course Mr. Perkup knows best. May 2nd. Send my dress coat and trousers to the little tailor's round the corner to have the creases taken out. Told Gowing not to call next Monday as we were going to the Mansion House. Send similar note to Cummings. May 3rd. Carrie went to Mrs. James at Sutton to consult about her dress for next Monday. While speaking incidentally to Spotch, one of our head clerks, about the Mansion House, he said, "Oh, I'm asked, but I don't think I shall go." When a vulgar man like Spotch is asked, I feel my invitation is considerably discounted. In the evening, while I was out, the little tailor brought round my coat and trousers, and because Sarah had not a shilling to pay for the pressing, he took them away again. May 4th. Carrie's mother returned the Lord Mayor's invitation, which was sent to her to look at, with apologies for having upset a glass of port over it. I was too angry to say anything. May 5th. Bought a pair of lavender kid gloves for next Monday, and 2 white ties in case one got spoiled in the tying. May 6th, Sunday. A very dull sermon, during which, I regret to say, I twice thought of the Mansion House reception tomorrow. May 7th. A big red-letter day, vis-à-vis the Lord Mayor's reception. The whole house upset. I had to get dressed at 6:30, as Carrie wanted the room to herself. Mrs. James had come up from Sutton to help Carrie, so I could not help thinking it unreasonable that she should require the entire attention of Sarah, the servant, as well. Sarah kept running out of the house to fetch something for Mrs., and several times I had, in my full evening dress, to answer the back door. The last time it was the greengrocer's boy, who, not seeing it was me, for Sarah had not lighted the gas, pushed into my hand 2 cabbages and half a dozen coal blocks. I indignantly threw them on the ground, and felt so annoyed that I so far forgot myself as to box the boy's ears. He went away crying, and said he should summons me, a thing I would not have happened for the world. In the dark, I stepped on a piece of the cabbage, which brought me down on the flags all of a heap. For a moment I was stunned, but when I recovered I crawled upstairs into the drawing-room, and looking into the chimney glass, discovered that my chin was bleeding, my shirt smeared with the coal blocks, and my left trouser torn at the knee. However, Mrs. James brought me down another shirt, which I changed in the drawing-room. I put a piece of court plaster on my chin, and Sarah very neatly sewed up the tear at the knee. At 9 o'clock, Carrie swept into the room, looking like a queen. Never have I seen her look so lovely or so distinguished. She was wearing a satin dress of sky blue, my favourite colour, and a piece of lace, which Mrs. James lent her round her shoulders to give a finish. I thought perhaps the dress was a little too long behind, and decidedly too short in front, but Mrs. James said it was à la mode. Mrs. James was most kind, and lent Carrie a fan of ivory with red feathers, the value of which, she said, was priceless, as the feathers belonged to the catchoo eagle, a bird now extinct. I preferred the little white fan which Carrie bought for 3 and 6 at Shoolbred's, but both ladies sat on me at once. We arrived at the mansion house too early, which was rather fortunate, for I had an opportunity of speaking to his lordship, who graciously condescended to talk with me some minutes. But I must say I was disappointed to find he did not even know Mr. Perkupp, the principal. I felt as if we had been invited to the mansion house by one who did not know the Lord Mayor himself. Crowds arrived, and I shall never forget the grand sight. My humble pen can never describe it. I was a little annoyed with Carrie, who kept saying, "Isn't it a pity we don't know anybody?" Once she quite lost her head. I saw someone who looked like Franching, from Peckham, and was moving towards him when she seized me by the coat-tails and said quite loudly, "Don't leave me," which caused an elderly gentleman, in a court suit and a chain round him, and 2 ladies, to burst out laughing. There was an immense crowd in the supper-room, and, my stars, it was a splendid supper. Any amount of champagne. Carrie made a most hearty supper, for which I was pleased, for I sometimes think she is not strong. There was scarcely a dish she did not taste. I was so thirsty I could not eat much. Receiving a sharp slap on the shoulder, I turned and, to my amazement, saw Farmerson, our ironmonger. He said, in the most familiar way, "This is better than Brickfield Terrace, eh?" I simply looked at him and said coolly, "I never expected to see you here." He said, with a loud, coarse laugh, "I like that. If you, why not me?" I replied, "Certainly." I wish I could have thought of something better to say. He said, "Can I get your good lady anything?" Carrie said, "No, I thank you." For which I was pleased. I said, by way of reproof to him, You never sent today to paint the bath, as I requested." Farmerson said, "Pardon me, Mr. Pooter, no shop when we're in company, please." Before I could think of a reply, one of the sheriffs, in full court costume, slapped Farmerson on the back and hailed him as an old friend, and asked him to dine with him at his lodge. I was astonished. For full 5 minutes they stood, roaring with laughter, and stood digging each other in the ribs. They kept telling each other they didn't look a day older. They began embracing each other and drinking champagne. To think that a man who mends our scraper should know any member of our aristocracy. I was just moving with Carrie, when Farmerson seized me rather roughly by the collar, and addressing the sheriff said, "Let me introduce my neighbour, Pooter." He did not even say Mr. The sheriff handed me a glass of champagne. I felt, after all, it was a great honour to drink a glass of wine with him, and I told him so. We stood chatting for some time, and at last I said, "You must excuse me now if I join Mrs. Pooter." When I approached her, she said, "Don't let me take you away from your friends. I'm quite happy standing here alone in a crowd, knowing nobody." As it takes two to make a quarrel, and as it was neither the time nor the place for it, I gave my arm to Carrie and said, "I hope my darling little wife will dance with me, if only for the sake of saying we had danced at the mansion house as guests of the Lord Mayor." Finding the dancing after supper was less formal, and knowing how much Carrie used to admire my dancing in the days gone by, I put my arm round her waist and we commenced a waltz. A most unfortunate accident occurred. I had got on a new pair of boots. Foolishly, I had omitted to take Carrie's advice, namely to scratch the soles of them with the points of the scissors or to put a little wet on them. I had scarcely started when, like lightning, my left foot slipped away and I came down, the side of my head striking the floor with such violence that for a second or two I did not know what had happened. I need hardly say that Carrie fell with me with equal violence, breaking the comb in her hair and grazing her elbow. There was a roar of laughter, which was immediately checked when people found that we had really hurt ourselves. A gentleman assisted Carrie to a seat, and I expressed myself pretty strongly on the danger of having a plain polished floor with no carpet or drugget to prevent people slipping. The gentleman, who said his name was Darwitz, insisted on escorting Carrie to have a glass of wine, an invitation which I was pleased to allow Carrie to accept. I followed, and met Farmerson, who immediately said in his loud voice, "Oh, are you the one who went down?" I answered with an indignant look. With execrable taste, he said, "Look here, old man, you're too old for this game. You must leave these capers to the youngsters. Come and have another glass. That is more our line." Although I felt I was buying his silence by accepting, we followed the others into the upper room. Neither Carrie nor I, after our unfortunate mishap, felt inclined to stay longer. As we were departing, Farmerson said, "Are you going? If so, you might give me a lift." I thought it better to consent, but wish I had first consulted Carrie. Chapter 5. After the Mansion House Ball. Carrie offended. Gowing also offended. A pleasant party at the Cummingses. Mr. Frenching of Peckham visits us. May 8th. I woke up with the most terrible headache. I could scarcely see, and the back of my neck was as if I had given it a crick. I thought first of sending for a doctor, but I did not think it necessary. When up, I felt faint and went to Brownish's, the chemist, who gave me a draught. So bad at the office, had to leave to come home. Went to another chemist in the city, and I got a draught. Brownish's dose seems to have made me worse. Have eaten nothing all day. To make matters worse, Carrie, every time I spoke to her, answered me sharply. That is, when she answered at all. In the evening, I felt very much worse again, and said to her, "I do believe I've been poisoned by the lobster mayonnaise at the Mansion House last night." She simply replied, without taking her eyes from her sewing, "Champagne never did agree with you." I felt irritated and said, "What nonsense you talk! I only had a glass and a half, and you know as well as I do." Before I could complete the sentence, she bounced out of the room. I sat over an hour waiting for her to return, but as she did not, I determined I would go to bed. I discovered Carrie had gone to bed without even saying good night, leaving me to bar the scullery door and feed the cat. I shall certainly speak to her about this in the morning. May 9th. Still a little shaky, with black specks. The Blackfriars Bi-Weekly News contains a long list of the guests at the Mansion House Ball. Disappointed to find our names omitted, though Farmerson's is in plainly enough with MLL after it, whatever that may mean. more than vexed, because we had ordered a dozen copies to send to our friends. Wrote to the Blackfriars Bi-Weekly News, pointing out their omission. Carrie had commenced her breakfast when I entered the parlour. I helped myself to a cup of tea, and I said, perfectly calmly and quietly, "Carrie, I wish a little explanation of your conduct last night." She replied, "Indeed, and I desire something more than a little explanation of your conduct the night before." I said, coolly, "Really? I don't understand you." Carrie said sneeringly, "Probably not. You were scarcely in a condition to understand anything." I was astonished at this insinuation and simply exclaimed, "Caroline!" She said, "Don't be theatrical, it has no effect on me. Reserve that tone for your new friend, Mr. Farmerson, the ironmonger." I was about to speak, when Carrie, in a temper such as I have never seen in her before, told me to hold my tongue. She said, "Now I'm going to say something. After professing to snub Mr. Farmerson, you permit him to snub you in my presence, and then accept his invitation to take a glass of champagne with you. And you don't limit yourself to one glass. You then offer this vulgar man, who made a bungle of repairing our scraper, a seat in our cab on the way home. I say nothing about his tearing my dress in getting in the cab, nor of treading on Mrs. James's expensive fan, which you knocked out of my hand, and for which he never even apologized. But you smoked all the way home without having the decency to ask my permission. That is not all. At the end of the journey, although he did not offer you a farthing towards his share of the cab, you asked him in. Fortunately, he was sober enough to detect, from my manner, that his company was not desirable. Goodness knows I felt humiliated enough at this. But to make matters worse, Gowing entered the room, without knocking, with 2 hats on his head and holding the garden rake in his hand, with Carrie's fur tippet, which he had taken off the downstairs hall peg, round his neck, and announced himself in a loud, coarse voice, "His Royal Highness the Lord Mayor." He marched twice round the room like a buffoon, and finding we took no notice, said, "Hallo, what's up? Lovers' quarrel, eh?" There was a silence for a moment, so I said quietly, "My dear Gowing, I'm not very well, and not quite in the humour for joking, especially when you enter the room without knocking, an act which I fail to see the fun of." Gowing said, "I'm very sorry, but I called for my stick, which I thought you would have sent round." I handed him his stick, which I remembered I had painted black with the enamel paint, thinking to improve it. He looked at it for a minute with a dazed expression and said, "Who did this?" I said, "Eh? Did what?" He said, "Did what? Why, destroyed my stick. It belonged to my poor uncle, and I value it more than anything I have in the world. I'll know who did it." I said, "I'm very sorry. I dare say it will come off. I did it for the best." Gowing said, "Then all I can say is it's a confounded liberty, and I would add you're a bigger fool than you look, and that's absolutely impossible." May 12th. Got a single copy of the Blackfriars Bi-Weekly News. There was a short list of several names they had omitted, but the stupid people had mentioned our names as Mr. and Mrs. C. Porter. Most annoying. Wrote again, and I took particular care to write our name in capital letters, P-O-O-T-E-R, so that there should be no possible mistake this time. May 16th. Absolutely disgusted on opening the Blackfriars Bi-Weekly News of today to find the following paragraph. "We have received 2 letters from Mr. and Mrs. Charles Pewter requesting us to announce the important fact that they were at the Mansion House ball." I tore up the paper and threw it in the waste-paper basket. My time is far too valuable to bother about such trifles. May 21st. The last week or 10 days terribly dull. Carrie being away at Mrs. James's at Sutton. Cummings also away. Gowing, I presume, is still offended with me for black enamelling his stick without asking him. May 22nd. Purchased a new stick with silver which cost 7 and 6pence. Shall tell Carrie 5 shillings, and sent it round with nice note to Gowing. May 23rd. Received strange note from Gowing. He said, "Offended? Not a bit, my boy. I thought you were offended with me for losing my temper. Besides, I found, after all, it was not my poor uncle's stick you painted. It was only a shilling thing I bought at a tobacconist's. However, I am much obliged to you for your handsome present all the same." May 24th. Carrie back. Hurrah! She looks wonderfully well, except that the sun has caught her nose. May 25th. Carrie brought down some of my shirts and advised me to take them to Trillip's round the corner. She said, "The fronts and cuffs are much frayed." I said without a moment's hesitation, "I'm afraid they are." Oh, how we roared! I thought we should never stop laughing. As I happened to be sitting next to the driver going to town on the bus, I told him my joke about the frayed shirts. I thought he would have rolled off his seat. They laughed at the office a good bit over it, too. May 26th. Left the shirts to be repaired at Trillip's. I said to him, "I'm afraid they are frayed." He said, without a smile, "They're bound to do that, sir." Some people seem to be quite destitute of a sense of humour. June 1st. The last week has been like old times, Carrie being back, and Gowing and Cummings called every evening nearly. Twice we sat out in the garden quite late. This evening we were like a pack of children and played Consequences. It is a good game. June 2nd. Consequences again this evening. Not quite so successful as last night, Gowing having several times overstepped the limits of good taste. June 4th. In the evening, Carrie and I went round to Mr. and Mrs. Cummings to spend a quiet evening with them. Gowing was there, also Mr. Stilbrook. It was quiet but pleasant. Mrs. Cummings sang 5 or 6 songs, "No, Sir," and "The Garden of Sleep" being best in my humble judgment, but what pleased me most was the duet she sang with Carrie. A classical duet, too. I think it is called "I Would That My Love." It was beautiful. If Carrie had been in better voice, I don't think professionals could have sung it better. After supper we made them sing it again. I never liked Mr. Stilbrook since the walk that Sunday to the Cow and Hedge, but I must say he sings comic songs well. His song, "We Don't Want the Old Men Now," made us shriek with laughter, especially the verse referring to Mr. Gladstone. But there was one verse I think he might have omitted, and I said so. But Gowing thought it was the best of the lot. June 6th. Trillip brought round the shirts, and to my disgust his charge for repairing them was more than I gave for them when new. I told him so, and he impertinently replied, "Well, they are better now than when they were new." I paid him, and said it was a robbery. He said if you wanted your shirt fronts made of pauper linen, such as is used for packing and bookbinding, why didn't you say so? June 7th. A dreadful annoyance. Met Mr. Franching, who lives at Peckham, and who is a great swell in his way. I ventured to ask him to come home to meet tea and take pot luck. I did not think he would accept such a humble invitation, but he did, saying in a most friendly way that he would rather peck with us than by himself. I said we had better get into this blue bus. He replied, "No blue bussing for me. I've had enough of the blues lately. I lost a cool thou over the copper scare. Step in here." We drove up home in style in a hansom cab, and I knocked 3 times at the front door without getting an answer. I saw Carrie through the panels of ground glass, with stars, rushing upstairs. I told Mr. Franching to wait at the door while I went round to the side. There I saw the grocer's boy actually picking off the paint on the door, which had formed into blisters. No time to reprove him, so went round and effected an entrance through the kitchen window. I let in Mr. Franching and showed him into the drawing-room. I went upstairs to Carrie, who was changing her dress, and told her I had persuaded Mr. Franching to come home. She replied, How can you do such a thing? You know it's Sarah's holiday, and there's not a thing in the house, the cold mutton having turned with the hot weather. Eventually, Carrie, like a good creature as she is, slipped down, washed up the teacups, and laid the cloth, and I gave Franching our views of Japan to look at while I ran round to the butcher's to get 3 chops. July 30th. The miserable, cold weather is either upsetting me or Carrie or both. We seem to break out into an argument about absolutely nothing, and this unpleasant state of things usually occurs at meal-times. This morning, for some unaccountable reason, we were talking about balloons, and we were as merry as possible. But the conversation drifted into family matters, during which Carrie, without the slightest reason, referred in the most uncomplimentary manner to my poor father's pecuniary trouble. I retorted by saying that Pa, at all events, was a gentleman, whereupon Carrie burst out crying. I positively could not eat any breakfast. At the office, I was sent for by Mr. Parrt, who said he was very sorry, but I should have to take my annual holidays from next Saturday. Franching called at the office and asked me to dine at his club, the Constitutional. Fearing disagreeables at home after the tiff this morning, I sent a telegram to Carrie, telling her I was going out to dine and she was not to sit up. Bought a little silver bangle for Carrie. July 31st. Carrie was very pleased with the bangle, which I left with an affectionate note on her dressing table last night before going to bed. I told Carrie we should have to start for our holiday next Saturday. She replied quite happily that she did not mind, except that the weather was so bad, and she feared that Miss Gibbons would not be able to get her a seaside dress in time. I told Carrie that I thought the drab one with pink bows looked quite good enough, and Carrie said she should not think of wearing it. I was about to discuss the matter when, remembering the argument yesterday, resolved to hold my tongue. I said to Carrie, "I don't think we can do better than good old Broadstairs." Carrie not only, to my astonishment, raised an objection to Broadstairs, for the first time, but begged me not to use the expression good old, but leave it to Mr. Stilbrook and other gentlemen of his type. Hearing my bus pass the window, I was obliged to rush out of the house without kissing Carrie as usual, and I shouted to her, "I leave it to you to decide." On returning in the evening, Carrie said she thought, as the time was so short, she had decided on Broadstairs, and had written to Mrs. Beck, Harbourview Terrace, for apartments. August 1st. Ordered a new pair of trousers at Edwards, and told them not to cut them so loose over the boot. The last pair, being so loose and also tight at the knee, looked like a sailor's, and I heard Pitt, that objectionable youth at the office, call out, "Hornpipe," as I passed his desk. Carrie has ordered of Miss Gibbons a pink Garibaldi and blue serge shirt, which I always think looks so pretty at the seaside. In the evening she trimmed herself a little sailor hat, while I read to her the Exchange and Mart. We had a good laugh over my trying on the hat when she had finished it. Carrie saying it looked so funny with my beard, and how the people would have roared if I went on the stage like it. August 2nd. Mrs. Beck wrote to say we could have our usual rooms at Broadstairs. That's off our mind. Bought a coloured shirt and a pair of tan-coloured boots, which I see many of the swell clerks wearing in the city, and here are all the go. August 3rd. A beautiful day. Looking forward to tomorrow. Carrie bought a parasol about 5 feet long. I told her it was ridiculous. She said, "Mrs. James of Sutton has one twice as long." So the matter dropped. I bought a capital hat for hot weather at the seaside. I don't know what it is called, but it is the shape of the helmet worn in India, only made of straw. Got 3 new ties, 2 coloured handkerchiefs, and a pair of navy blue socks at Pope Brothers. Spent the evening packing. Carrie told me not to forget to borrow Mr. Higsworth's telescope, which he always lends me, knowing I know how to take care of it. Sent Sarah out for it. While everything was seeming so bright, the last post brought us a letter from Mrs. Beck saying, I have let all my house to one party, and I'm sorry I must take back my words, and I'm sorry you must find other apartments. But Mrs. Womming, next door, will be pleased to accommodate you, but she cannot take you before Monday, as our rooms are engaged Bank Holiday week. And that brings us to the end of the chapter, and where I was going to finish reading for tonight, which, yeah, grief, we got through that rather fast. But thank you for listening. I hope it's been enjoyable. This guy's an absolute disaster. He's great. Fun read though. Thank you. I'm interested to see how it develops. It feels like one that is there's like a couple of different, there's sort of setups of bits and pieces. It feels like I'm hoping there's some kind of slightly long running setups and payoffs. Trials upon tribulations, yes. You think you kind of love this book? He's just so ineffectual. Yeah, well, I'm glad. Local band keeps getting into scenarios. I mean, that's the thing. It you title it "The Diary of a Nobody," and like it sets out at the start like, well, people who are more interesting and lead more interesting lives read diaries, so why shouldn't I write mine? And yeah, I was worried that it might be the kind of book that relies heavily on like, I'm trying to think how best to put it, because if I say jokes that haven't aged well, or jokes that like haven't carried across, I don't mean like racist or sexist jokes and stuff, because that's the kind of thing that's often quite heavily implied when you talk about like jokes of their time. But I mean things that rely on situations or events and knowledge of the period of time in which it was written. And there is at least like one scenario that came up in the first chapter. Yeah, context we don't have exactly. Because there's one thing in the first chapter with the thing of them going to the pub, which is covered in the footnotes at the back, and I didn't know about, and I don't know if anyone here knows about. In fact, I'm going to find it so that I can cite it, and also just slam the book into the microphone. Where is it? The talking about them going to the Cow and Hedge pub, and it says, until the footnotes with the comment about that's all right, bona fide travellers. Until 1914, the law allowed only those who had travelled more than 3 miles a drink out of hours on Sundays. Only those of the lowest morality, i.e. not puta, would fib about the distance they had come. So therefore, that's like a little thing that's just slipped in, it's just sort of there in the text, that if you're reading it at the time, you would appreciate like, oh, they've not travelled far enough to legally be allowed to drink at the pub out of hours. For some reason, that was the law. What a truly bizarre and fascinatingly inscrutable law that seems to us now. The notion that someone on the door would ask you where you'd come from, you would answer honestly, and then they would go, no, you've not, knowing the area, would go, no, you've not travelled far enough, piss off. And so that's how that whole thing played out. But obviously we now, this is sure news to me and seemingly everyone else in chat. I suppose no weirder than your blue laws here now. I don't know what those are. You know, there you go. Even more modern context that is missing. So, yeah, it was my worry that there was going to be like a lot of stuff like that, and it seems for the most part that we can still generally pick up on the farces as set up and played out. Rules about when and where you can buy liquor. Ah, right, yeah, fair. Yeah, I think you'd have weirder laws than us over in the States about that, right? Till a few years ago, it was illegal to sell alcohol on Sundays in Minnesota. Wow. in Kentucky you can't buy booze before 1 p.m. on Sundays. You like that frayed puns haven't changed at all? Yes. Yeah, so, like, anyone, and if Lucy's lurking in chat, I'm wondering if she's going to pop in and, like, complete this thought for me. But anyone watching familiar with Green Wing, this guy feels extremely like Mark Heap's character in that, Dr. Alan Statham. Like, that is who he feels like to me. And frankly, I would love to have if nothing else, the acting chops, but also the stamina to like read the whole thing kind of performed as that character for the duration of the stream, because that is really who it feels like to me. If you've not seen it, it's just an incredible comedic performance. I mean, frankly, Mark Heap is, I think, one of my favourite comic actors, and never gives less than absolutely everything to whatever role he's in. Getting Rincewind vibes too. I'm gonna get chased out of here very quickly when I say, I think most people know I've not actually really read any. I've barely read any Pratchett, and I don't think I've read any Discworld novels from start to finish. So I know, there we go, sorry. I know. I have Guards. I did start reading it, and then I just sort of fell off. And that was because I picked up a hardback copy of Nightwatch from a used bookstore, because I thought, oh, I might as well start with some Pratchett. And then all the Pratchett fans were like, no, don't start with that one. That's the Nightwatch series, so you don't want to start with that one. Go and get Guards. That's Vimes and stuff. And, you know, okay, but I feel bad. Shame about copyright, or he'd start a reading Mort on stream petition. Like, yeah, we would absolutely love to. We've talked about that sort of thing many times. I like, genuinely, it would, if nothing else, be a great place for me to read Pratchett. But I just, yeah, I haven't, and yeah, like that. I know some other streamers who who do read copyrighted stuff on stream. One of the channels we raided to, who I don't think they I'm forgetting the name now. Literally one of the channels that we found, because like we're looking on the writing and reading topic, and found like someone else who was streaming that looked, they looked like a cool person. Let's go over to them, and they were reading Pratchett like when we first raided them. And so yeah, like other streamers do, but it is one that I would feel like, because we archive things. Like if this is more ephemeral, reaching for the big words, and we were just like doing it on Twitch and leaving it, and then when the VOD went, it went, I would probably feel a little bit more comfortable about reading Going Postal. Thank you, Pirelli. Yes. Yeah, if it was like that, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable about like reading something. Yeah, something more copyrighted, like it's a sliding scale, like that. But because we keep them, we archive them, we stick them on YouTube, and that, it feels really like we should do our best to protect ourselves by sticking to stuff in the public domain. So really, to do something like that, I'd kind of want to contact the Pratchett estate, and I can't imagine we'd ever hear back. Not, like, Rihanna Pratchett seems like a cool person, a very cool person, and is, handling that all well. But I feel like, the Pratchett estate's kind of big enough that it would purely need, like, an incredible act of kindness and good grace on their part to go, yeah, sure, go ahead, help yourself. Yeah. The only Pratchett you've read that wasn't even fully Pratchett. It was Good Omens. You got bored and gave up halfway through. Wow. You didn't realize a copyright extended to reading like that? I don't know that it does. This is the thing. I'm not. Neither Lucy nor I are experts on this. And so it's purely like I have tried to look. It's not that I'm just like it is it is a little bit that I'm guessing, but I have tried to look to see like how copyright law functions across all like to protect works across different things, because yeah, I don't know. It's very confusing, and it's the sort of thing where really the easiest, fastest way I think to get an answer on what is permissible and what's not would be to talk to a copyright lawyer, and I don't know any, especially any who like deal with this sort of territory. Would have thought that reading as this is someone's work is fair use. See, my feeling would be that if we were to read out, if you're reading like extracts from a book, I say if I were like reading extracts, even like a chapter from a book, which we've done during book week, where we read like a chapter from, I've read some from Annihilation and stuff. That feels okay because it's an extract, and so that feels like it would come under a sort of a fair use kind of territory. But if you were recreating the entire copyrighted work from start to finish in what is essentially an audiobook format, that would feel to me too close to essentially giving away the entire work for free. That it would in a sense, I guess, be transformative in that you're not just like giving away the printed book, you are reading it aloud, you're converting it into a new medium and reading it aloud, or by reading it aloud. But that also exists. Like there are audiobooks of the Pratchett works, for instance. And as I say, this is purely me speculating, because I've never talked to any kind of copyright law expert on this, so I don't know. It can very much depend. If it was for the purposes of review or suitably transformative, then sure, but a straight read is probably a big no. Yeah, and so that's the thing, because I don't know, because I'm uncertain, I'm just like, I'm saying because I'm just speaking as myself, but if Lucy's around, she can chime in too. That's sort of where we just prefer to like protect ourselves, really, by purely sticking to things that are in the public domain. And even then, it's why like so many of the books that we've got have, they're ones that are compiled by people today, and they'll have like introductions and bits, and even then I'll like not read the introductions, because that is again someone's original work created more recently. And actually as well, the what is it, I've got like a little book of old sci-fi stories compiled by the author Adam Roberts, who is still very much alive and well and writing and working. And there is in that a translation of the Voltaire short story Micromegas, which I really, really love. And the translation of that is credited to Adam Roberts. There are other translations of it from French to English, but that one is seemingly credited to him, and so that's where I'm like, ooh, okay, especially if we're like monetizing this, again, just like for the sake of caution, I want to read an old translation of this book, which is going to be like probably 95% the same. I don't know, just white guy with a podcast mic in front of me making up a number. But it's just, it's just all that trying to be cautious with how we do this. Not that we are in any way close to being a big enough channel to, we are flying so far under the radar, we are cutting the grass. But yeah, just don't want to risk it really. Two of the biggest things in judging fair use is how much of the work is used and whether the heart of the work is used. So yeah, fair use would not cover reading an entire published work that is still under copyright, so stick to public domain or maybe Creative Commons licenses. Yeah, exactly. Better safe than sorry, yeah. Yeah, Creative Commons is another one. I think that was suggested sometime in the last few weeks. Works in the Creative Commons has been suggested. And that is something that I do need to look into more, or could consider looking into more. Obviously, there's still plenty of works that you know we can take from that are from authors who shuffled off this mortal coil 70 plus years ago. So we're not like hurting for material, I don't think. Although saying that, I do need to go on a bit of a hunt and acquire some more books. Teehee. Yay, book shopping. So yeah, but yeah, it's good to have a broader range. Although, like, I don't know about you, but I like the vibe that reading old books brings. Because it's kind of jarring to me how different it feels to going between something like this that we've been reading today. It's the same words, it's broadly the same grammatical structure, and yet it's different. And it's sort of jarring going from that, as we like find during book week, when again we like relax the rules and read extracts from more modern things. It just feels really different to read a modern book. And yeah, that's the thing. There's a vibe to it, and I like the cozy old vibe, and reading the classics, the ones that have survived, and sort of getting to see why. So yeah, it's fun. Things to think about. Good talk. Right, we've padded like another 20 minutes onto the end of this. Nice. That will confuse the VOD watchers. But it is. Yeah, it seems like a decent time to end the stream. Joey has not moved from my lap. He is just down and out. Feel like you're gaining culture. But see, if you capitalise it like that, the E&M Banks estate are going to kick in the door instead. No, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. I hope it's been good. Hope it's been enjoyable. We started a new book. We'll probably be finishing this new book fairly soon, so I'll have to find yet again something else, unless Lucy's got a new like epic tome to work through while I pivot back to short stories. Who knows? We'll figure that one out. Please give Joey a kiss for you. I will do. I give him lots of kisses throughout the day, but he will get more. Rest assured. And I will tell him that it is from chat, and I can name individual names if you would like. Yeah, thank you all for being here. Do we want to? We could. So, we go on a raid. Loading Ready Run are doing. They're in the middle of a thing, which is a little bit of an awkward one, but they do choose your own adventure-ish books, and to be honest, those were kind of a bit of an inspiration for the start of this channel. They'd been doing them a little bit before, and Lucy and I really enjoyed watching them, and that was kind of first, I think, gave us the thought of, hey, reading on Twitch might be fun, actually. Should we try and do that and see if it works and if people turn out to watch it? And wouldn't you know it, they're doing that this evening. They started about an hour ago, maybe? I'm not sure. But they're doing it now. So let's raid, do a rare one, over to there. If I can type at this angle. Did I get that right? I did get that right. Excellent. So, yeah, I'm going to take off. Thank you all for being here. Please, go over in the raid, have a look. They're good people, doing good things. And, yeah, we should be back, I think, on Wednesday with Lucy, reading more stuff. But for now, enjoy yourselves, have a good rest of the weekend, take care, and we'll see you on the next one. both myself and Joey. Plus also good night, goodbye and good night.